What's up, Walmart Nostalgia? Dave here with a review of Wake Up Dead Man, a Knives Out mystery from Rian Johnson and Netflix. Yes, this is the third Knives Out movie following Glass Onion in 2022 and the original Knives Out in 2019. And this is the second of the two Knives Out sequels that Netflix purchased in that $400+ million deal they made several years ago. Daniel Craig, of course, back as Detective Benoit Blanc, featuring a new murder mystery case and a new ensemble cast in a new place. The format of Knives Out continues to feel fresh and interesting, and that's because Rian Johnson continues to try and do new things and thematically break new ground with this franchise, even while keeping some familiar parts such as the general structure and, of course, the lead detective character remaining the same. Wake Up Dead Man is another excellent murder mystery film from Rian Johnson. The Knives Out formula continues to feel really fresh because that formula continues to change thematically and structurally. As again, we have a compelling setting and ensemble cast, and Daniel Craig's Benoit Blanc is able to come into this new story and play off of it really well. But the choice to foreground Josh O'Connor's character and make Blanc clearly a supporting character in the movie does Wake Up Dead Man a lot of good. And thematically, observationally, Wake Up Dead Man has a lot to say. The way it plays with its various characters' motivations, the way it introduces its classic murder mystery twists. I think there's a lot here for everyone, whether you're a fan of Knives Out, just a fan of this genre in general, or if you're more a fan of the larger comment that exists above and within the story. Josh O'Connor and Josh Brolin both continue their tremendous 2025s with their roles in this movie, and Daniel Craig is as good as ever as Blanc. I really enjoyed it, and I think it's a stronger movie than Glass Onion. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, the Knives Out films, and Wake Up Dead Man, of course, included in this, they're just very well written. They're clever movies. They keep you guessing. The classic murder mystery storytelling means that you can largely kind of figure out where things are going to go. There's no crazy Deus Ex Machina in terms of plot surprise or anything like that. You can kind of feel it out, shake it out. I think it's just so structurally sound, and the characters are finally written enough that you're okay to go on that journey because you're really enjoying that time spent with the whole world and the framing of the story. And again, I really like the decision to wait about 45 minutes before we even have Daniel Craig's Blanc enter the fray. You know, the whole setup here of Josh O'Connor's young priest character Judd, after letting his emotions get the best of him, gets reassigned by, church leadership to a small parish in upstate New York that actually needs his help. In this case, Josh Brolin is the head of this church. This church was called the Lady of Perpetual Fortitude, an absolutely crazy name for a church. Is led by Monsignor Wicks, played by Josh Brolin, and Wicks is a very flamboyant and fiery, passionate, controversial, polarizing pastor that is basically alienating anyone from attending and returning to his church apart from his very loyal flock of close congregates. And that loyal flock, those people that kind of hang on his every word, are the majority of the cast here. Of course, Andrew Scott, Jeremy Renner, Kayleigh Spaney, Kerry Washington, and Daryl McCormick, as well as a longtime member of the church, Martha, played by Glenn Close, and the groundskeeper for the church, played by Thomas Hayden Church. That's really Wicks's entire crew, and when Judd gets sent there, it clearly becomes an antagonistic affront to Wicks's seniority, his intentions, and his control of the church, and he makes that very clear in kind of putting Judd through the ringer by having him take his confession and making it very uncomfortable in the process. I think the first time you go through that confession scene is one of the tremendous moments of the movie. Really great stuff there. And I really like that framing, because just as you're getting attached to this whole crew, of course, the murder happens, it will. And it's not a surprise who ends up being murdered, but from there, the kind of seemingly unsolvable nature of its crime, which comes up a lot in the story, I think really compels. But Josh O'Connor is able to, I think, really carry a lot of the greater themes of the movie as we're going through the murder mystery beats. Of course, this is a priest who really believes in his cause after coming to the church to save himself in the first place. And I think there's some really good stuff there where, he starts to be questioned and his motives, and he's being distrusted by the whole community. I like all of that, how that's going, and then him feeling like his back is up against the wall. All that has things start to crescendo and snowball against him. I really like all that build up. I think in terms of the ensemble, the cast is great. The characters are good. There's not a ton of depth to a lot of them. A lot of them are not giving enough time, right? Like, we're talking about people like Andrew Scott and Jeremy Renner, right? Really well-known, well-regarded actors. Kaylee Spaney, one of the, absolute best rising stars we have in Hollywood, right? She's crushing it. They're not giving a ton of scenes. They're not giving any really too much solo work, right? There's not a ton they have to do. In fact, it's actually Daryl McCormick who gets probably the most to do of that entire ensemble, which was a bit surprising to me. However, I really enjoyed his character. I thought that was one of the best elements of Wake Up Dead Man. Rian Johnson has talked about how he loves that these movies are very specific to their time. Glass Onion, of course, was very much a COVID reaction type movie. Wake Up Dead Man very much talking about our, kind of political and societal comment. And Daryl McCormick's character, Cy Draven, this aspiring right-wing politician and influencer. And I think when he introduces himself to Judd and he talks about all the various tactics he employed to try and connect with the people, literally going through every type of political and societal issue, whether it's substantive or completely contrived. The amount of acronyms and things he mentions in that list I thought was exhaustingly hilarious. Like, kind of really great moment, great piece of writing. But Cy Draven's a big aspect of this movie, but I really like how his desire to record everything and as we're introduced in the movie, he's growing his YouTube channel off the most controversial bits of Monsignor Wix's really explosive sermons and homilies and whatnot. How Cy Draven stays in the movie is quite interesting. Daniel Craig, of course, really crushes as Benoit Blanc. He has the flamboyancy of the character, the southern charm of the character really down, and he's able to, I think, play the character at really just the right tune. Like, I think Craig's able to continue to do this really effortlessly, it seems. And I think as long as the scripts and the structure of these movies continue to be what they are, both from Johnson and Craig's own interest, will remain in the story, you would have to think. And we do know that Knives Out 4 is not coming anytime soon. There's no official deal for a Knives Out 4 with Netflix. And Rian Johnson has said that he wants to make at least one original movie now before he returns to this franchise, which is good. I think everyone will welcome that. But yeah, I mean, Wake Up Dead Man, as the title suggests, there is a resurrection of sorts, and I was just starting to think about that title and be like, surely that's gonna happen, right? It's be a literal title. And then it does happen, and it happens, I think, in a more drastic degree than I was expecting. I really like how all that's cleaned up. Is the last, half hour, 40 minutes of the movie a lot of mystery plot being tied together in a nice bow? Yes, but I think that's a convention, a trope of these type of movies that people really enjoy. Like, you like seeing things get wrapped up. You like seeing them figure out the mystery, all the parts being revealed. Is it a lot of exposition and narration of people telling you what they did and why they did it? Of course. But I found it still really satisfying because the various characters that play a part in that felt pretty well realized for the most part. Glenn Close is in this movie. Watching it or coming into it, I was like, oh, Glenn Close, is this another one of her efforts to maybe finally get an Oscar win after all this time, right? Coming so close with The Wife, failing so miserably with Hillbilly Elegy. Hindsight continues to make that choice look worse and worse. The list goes on. Maybe this is her turn for Glenn Close, right? And she's very much a supporting player until the very end of the movie when she has a little bit more to do. Again, in hindsight, you really see it coming. You understand how all that was scoped out there. But there's just inherently a richness to the way the story is trying to progress. O'Connor's able, I think, to really dig into this character in a nice way. I think I love the scene where he's trying to do some sleuthing with Blanc, and he ends up getting caught with someone he doesn't even know, telling him a lot and kind of bearing her soul to him because he is a priest, and she's gone through a bad time, and he's so willing and able to listen because he really cares about what he's doing as a man of faith. And I think what the movie's saying about faith and what it means to people it really communicates the whole spectrum of that. And I think in a really respectful and kind of compelling manner, because Blanc is someone who from the beginning says that he's not a man of faith. He has not felt welcomed in the church. I think they've kind of nodded at Blanc as a gay man in the past. It's not really overtly said in any of the text in these movies. Nonetheless, they do a pretty good job of him saying without saying that he's never really felt welcome in the church and just doesn't believe in what it's about. And we have the other side of that, right, where we're talking about that really believe in faith, and the faith that a lot of the ensemble have in Wicks, and why they have that faith is expressed pretty interestingly. I think it was pretty sophisticated, right? It's not, there's no punching down here on either side of these things. The spectrum of faith, I think, is handled pretty well. And again, when it's in a really fun and intriguing and pleasurable mystery type movie, the fact that you have this much extra subtext to dig into if you're intrigued by it, I think again really speaks to what Knives Out's able to do with Rian Johnson at the helm. So really enjoyed it. It's not a movie that seemingly is in the Oscar race, right? This was the last of Netflix's fall films to release this year. It's become quite clear that Frankenstein and Train Dreams are Netflix's two best horses on that front, with maybe Jay Kelly following in third, at least maybe with some smaller nominations. House of Dynamite, Nouvelle Vague, and also Wake Up Dead Man seemingly are going to be left out in the cold in the Oscar race for Netflix. But hey, it's going to be incredibly highly watched, just like Glass Onion was on Netflix. Very disappointing that Wake Up Dead Man got an even smaller theatrical release than Glass Onion. Glass Onion actually played the major theater change, albeit it was only for a week around Thanksgiving of that year. But the film made $15 million in like 600 theaters. No small feat at all. And again, shows you how much money is left on the table by Netflix not theatrically releasing this franchise. Of course, if we look back to the first Knives Out back in 2019, that movie made almost $300 million as a completely original, movie for adults. Very unheard of at this point, right? Wake Up Dead Man didn't get release in major chains. It had a very token release from Netflix because they were not able to agree with the windowing, with the major chains. I think part of that was Netflix was really, settled on wanting to release this on December 12th, but they weren't willing to theatrically release it earlier in the fall to have a big enough window for it to accommodate, AMC, Regal, and Cinemark. So disappointing. Again, why would you trust Netflix to do anything differently if they do in fact acquire Warner Brothers? Check out my video on that acquisition for more of my thoughts there. Nonetheless, let me know what you thought of Wake Up Dead Man. How do you like this as a movie? How do you like in relationship to the other Knives Out movies? Which one do you like the best? Do you agree this is better than Glass Onion? Let me know which stood out to you most. And for more movie reviews, subscribe. And I'll see you next time.